Hey guys, Nintendrew here. For those who don't know, I am a Nintendo enthusiast and retro video game collector, and in this video I'll take you for a behind-the-scenes look at my new 2018 game room and studio setup. So, let's get started. Okay, so first things first, I've got to let you guys know this video was made possible by my awesome supporters over at Patreon. For just $1 a month, you can get early access to most of my uploads a day before they're released, and higher tiers have even cooler rewards, including the opportunity to plan a video for the channel with me. So I need to specifically acknowledge a user by the name of Technonerds. He helped me plan this video and decided some of the stuff that I'll be showing you today. So a big shout out and a huge thank you to Technonerds for his support. So with that out of the way, let's get to it. Okay, so here we are in the new 2018 game room, and I'm going to start with the wall on the right because this is where all my consoles are. And if you've seen my 2017 tour, then this will look pretty familiar. I've basically recreated everything that I had in the old room, but for those of you who are new, I will briefly cover my setup here. Underneath the TV, I've got 18 consoles hooked up. In the middle are my Nintendo consoles from the NES to the Wii U, as well as a Sega Genesis with 32X and Sega CD attachments. Over on the left side, I've got my Xbox through Xbox One, as well as a Sega Dreamcast and an Atari Flashback system. And over on the right are my PlayStation consoles, in addition to a Sega Saturn and a Retrobit SR3 Plus clone console. And these are all hooked up to the 55-inch TV sitting up above. On the top of the TV, I have a webcam, and this is what I use for live streaming so that I can sit back on the couch and interact with chat. And on the bottom left here, I've got my AV and HDMI switches, as well as an Elgato Game Capture HD, which I use to record footage and also for streaming. On the top of the unit, I've got what I've been calling these console shadow boxes. So I've got one to represent basically each console generation from Nintendo. So over on the left side, I've got this NES display, which has some cool stuff like Power Glove and Rob the Robot. The second one is for the Super Nintendo, so I've got a selection of classic Super Nintendo games, as well as a Super Nintendo Classic. In the middle is my 64 display with my sealed gold Nintendo 64 controller, as well as some cool games like a copy of Super Mario 64 I got signed by Charles Martinet. The fourth display is for the GameCube, of course, referencing some of the bigger hits like Wind Waker and Animal Crossing. And finally, I've got one for both the Wii and Wii U era, so I've got some of the best games from each of those as well. The shelving itself is something that I designed and put together using IKEA's Besta planner system. So I've had plenty of you guys asking me where you can get an entertainment center like this, and I would just say that I used their online planner to design and put this one together. And I'll have a link to that in the description if you'd like to check that out. On the sides of the unit, I've got over here on the left side, there's a selection of games for the NES. And below that, Super Nintendo, and below that, I've got my boxed N64 games. I'm starting to work towards a complete set of boxed N64 games. And over on the right side, we've got the same thing for GameCube, Wii, and for Wii U and Switch. Now, one of the things that Technonerds asked me to point out was that he wanted to see some of the rarest titles that I have on each platform, so let's quickly run through some of those as well. On the NES, I don't have anything super rare, but I do have a full set of the Mega Man titles from Mega Man 1 through 6, as well as Castlevania 1, 2, and 3, which I keep in this separate display over here. For Super Nintendo, I've got a few of the big names. I've got Earthbound, Chrono Trigger, and Mega Man 7. For 64, of course, over here on the wall to the right, you can see I've got the full North American library I put together. So, of course, I do have the rarest titles available for the 64, which right now include Clay Fighter Sculptor's Cut, Worms Armageddon, and Super Bowling. For the GameCube, I don't have anything super rare, but I did want to point out these Zelda promotional discs. So one of them includes Zelda 1 and 2 for the NES, as well as Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. And the second disc has Ocarina of Time, as well as the Master Quest version. So again, not super rare, but these are a couple of GameCube games that I think are pretty cool. And finally, for the Wii, I would say the rarest titles I own would be Xenoblade Chronicles, the Metroid Prime Trilogy, and my special edition copy of The Last Story, which is a really cool RPG for Wii as well. Along the top of the media center, I've got just some boxed consoles and collectibles, some figures, just an assortment of various console boxes and special editions and that sort of thing. And coming back to the wall over on the right, above my Nintendo 64 games, I have some Perler bead sprites on the wall, as well as a good portion of my Amiibo collection. Along the top of these shelves, I've also got 5 of my favorite Nintendo 64 games. Those are The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, Conker's Bad Fur Day, Donkey Kong 64, Super Mario 64, and Star Fox 64. And down below, I've just got some more boxed N64 games and my Virtual Boy games. I'm working on making some custom cases for these. If you don't know, I did put together the whole US library of Virtual Boy games as well. Of course, that's only 14 titles in North America, so that's not very much. But that does, of course, include the elusive Jack Brothers. And you can see the custom cases I'm working on here. Moving into this entryway, I've got some pieces of wall art and a couple of doors. One leads to a bathroom, the other to a closet. But in the back, I do have some shelves, which I've just put some Nintendo memorabilia on. I've got like some plush toys and figures, that sort of thing. I've got a shelf for Mario, Zelda, Animal Crossing, and Pokemon, and just some general Nintendo stuff. Alright, so on the green wall, I've got 2 bookshelves, and then I have my magazine display in the middle. On the leftmost bookcase, I've got my collection of Game Boy Color systems. And here is my PlayStation set. For those of you who don't think that I game on anything but Nintendo, here are my games for PlayStation through PlayStation 4. Down below is a Sega shelf, so I've got some stuff like a Game Gear and a Sega Nomad, that sort of thing. And on the bottom is where I have my Fantastic Series Nintendo 64 consoles. In the middle, of course, I've got my Nintendo Power collection. I don't have every issue of Nintendo Power, but I've got a good portion of them. And one thing I do want to point out is this magazine rack. So many people have asked me where to get it, and I wish I could help you. I honestly don't know. I got mine secondhand from a flea market, and I painted it black to match the rest of my furniture. But I do really like this display. And up above, I've got 2 shelves, one which has my plug-and-play systems, and the second which has one of every North American release Nintendo handheld, from the original Game Boy through to the DSi. And on the rightmost bookcase, I've got my Virtual Boy up top. Some NES games, these are the ones that I'd showcased earlier. And I've got a shelf dedicated to my Xbox games. Some PC games, I'm a big fan of PC gaming as well. And then this shelf has all of my boxed Nintendo handheld games, as well as some special edition Game Boy Advance SP systems up here in the front. Now these boxes are actually empty. I like to keep my cartridge games out of the box so they're easy to access. So I've got just a few 3-ring binders that I like to use for my Game Boy Advance, and DS, 3DS titles. For the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance, I just use like normal card sleeves, and then for DS and 3DS titles, I've got some coin collector sleeves, and those are the perfect size for the little DS cartridges, so I much prefer this kind of storage for ease of use. And on the bottom, I've just got a little tribute to Atari, with a 2600 console and another Atari flashback. Moving on to the 4th and final wall, this is where I've got my workstation set up. I've got my mini fridge over on the left, of course, and then I've got my desk here. This is what I see when I'm making videos for you guys. I've got my camera on the left side of my desk. Under my left monitor, if you can see there, I've got a Retrode plug-in, this is just kind of a peripheral that lets you play cartridge games on your PC. And on the right, I've got my Nintendo Switch, which is hooked up to the TV through an HDMI cable routed behind the media center. On the right side of my desk, I've also got my 3D printer. I don't know if I'm going to keep it here in the game room, but that's where it is right now because I've been doing a lot of projects with it, like my GameCube Classic Edition system. I do want to point out on the wall as well, this will look familiar if you saw last year's tour. I've got my first and last issues of Nintendo Power framed here, because they did a cool tribute for the final issue that recreated the scene from the first one, so I thought that was a neat homage. And I've got this big Nintendrew banner up top. I did not make that just for this room. I had this banner from a convention last year, so I figured it was a great way to use some of the empty space on the wall. In the middle of the room, I have my red couch and a Splatoon pillow here. And I've also got my NES controller coffee table. I put this together and painted it myself just for this room setup. And I think it turned out pretty cool. And that's about it. I really hope you've enjoyed this look at my new 2018 game room. If you have any more questions for me or just want to let me know what you think, be sure to let me know down in the comments below and I'll do my best to get back to you. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you did enjoy the video, please do consider subscribing to Nintendrew for all sorts of cool gaming content, and make sure to share it with any friends who might find it interesting. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Bye! Hey guys, thanks again for checking out the video and for making it all the way to the end. Hope you enjoyed. As always, I've got links to all my social media in the description below, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Discord, that sort of thing. And if you'd like to help out even more, I've got a link to my Patreon on the right side of your screen. Otherwise, I hope you'll look out for the next video. Take care.